with their employer, like many of you have. You may or may not like it. If you don't like it, you can move into the public option that I propose in my plan. But if you like it, you shouldn't have Washington dictating to you. You cannot keep the plan you have.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. Senator Sanders, 45 seconds to respond.
Under Joe's plan, essentially, we retain the status quo.
That's not true.
No,
It is exactly
right.
true. But thank you. And by the way, Joe, under your plan, you asked me how we're going to pay for it. Under your plan, I'll tell you how we're paying for it right now. The average worker in America, their family makes $60,000 a year. That family is now paying $12,000 a year for health care, 20% of their income. Under Medicare for All, that family will be paying $1,200 a year because we're eliminating the profiteering of the drug companies and the insurance companies and ending this Byzantine and complex administration of thousands of separate health care plans.
Senator Klobuchar, I'm going to come to you.
My name was mentioned.
Yes, I'm going to come to you, but 45 seconds. 45 seconds for Vice President Biden.
I'm the only guy that's not interrupted here, all right? I'm going to interrupt now. It costs $30 trillion. Let's get that straight. $30 trillion over 10 years. Some say it costs $20 trillion. Some say it costs 40. The idea that you're going to be able to save that person making $60,000 a year on Medicare for All is absolutely preposterous. 16% of the American public is on Medicare now, and everybody has a tax taken out of their paycheck now. Tell me, you're going to add 84% more, and there's not going to be higher taxes? At least before he was honest about it.
Oh, Joe.
It's going to increase personal taxes. They're going to be...
That's right. We are going to increase personal taxes. Okay. But we're eliminating premiums. We're eliminating co-payments. We're eliminating deductibles. We're eliminating all out-of-pocket expenses. And no family in America will spend more than $200 a year on prescription drugs.
Senator Klobuchar.
Our plan will save the average worker.
Senator Klobuchar, we'd like to hear from you.
Okay.
Yes, Senator Klobuchar. Pay premiums or co-payments.
Hey.
This was a great exchange in that debate. Part of that debate, I covered this, was somewhat of a snoozer. But when he got to the second, let's say, hour, and the candidates got far more testy in their responses and in their communication towards one another. Warren goes after Buttigieg for his wine cave. Whether that gets resonance or not, we're going to see, because Warren herself is susceptible to attacks on this particular issue. I think they almost cancel each other out. In this case, it's food fight at fourth. But in this case, this is different. These are the two front runners by polling, be it national polling and in some respects even in local polling, but these are the two clearly front runners. And it's not just front runners. These are avatars of larger themes that are taking place within the context of the Democratic Party. The youth vote goes for Sanders more than anyone else in the race combined, whereas the older vote is clearly within the camp of Biden. You have one group saying we want fundamental change in what this party looks like going forward. And you have another group that says we just want to go back to the Obama era. We were good there. We had good feelings. He made us feel good when he sung Al Green. At the end of that debate, the responses were such. This is Frank Luntz. This is Frank Luntz results when he brought these people in and he asked them what do they think after the debate. He's asking them who do they think won the debate and why. Listen to this.
Bernie Sanders won the debate. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Now this is significant because only 6 of you walked in here supporting Sanders. Those people who are not voting for Sanders but you thought he won the debate, explain to me why. Yes.
I thought his personality came through quite a lot, and for me, that immediate reaction, I always imagine somebody going up against Trump, and that to me sparks like why he won tonight going against his people.
Tell me why.
Because I think he had passion with his answers. He's for the people, and it comes through his answers that he gave us.
Thought I liked Amy and Biden.
And who do you like?
Definitely Bernie Sanders.
He won you over also. Mm-hmm. Tell me why.
He's on fire. He wants it so bad.
Did you say fire?
Yeah, he's on fire.
Explain that. I mean,
He's just feverishly hungry to change the America.
I would say thirsty, feverishly thirsty. My wife hates it when I say that word. The word trips me out. But you get my point. A lot of these people looked at this debate and says, that's our guy. In one case, someone says he knows the answers immediately. He's authentic. And when you look at polling trends, this bears out. I often tell people it's not so much the individual number of a particular poll. It's more so what the trends are saying in the context of that poll and what people are thinking. Sanders did great in this debate. So did Klobuchar, etc. But I just wanted to make this point that this fight between these two men, for all intents and purposes, represents the fight that is taking place in the Democratic Party. And this fight has started to clarify. I think this duality between these two is going to become consistent and more pronounced as the race narrows, which I strongly suspect the race will continue to do. Sanders is closing in on Biden. And there's a recent Reuters poll that I think is making that point straightforward. Let's look at a little bit of polling. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. YouTube demonetizes pretty much all of these videos, at least in the beginning, so this content is brought to you by you. I don't want to take a long time on this, but I do like to show trends because I think trends are important. And just, you can find any particular poll, but if you're looking at the overarching majority, that type of stuff. This is Iowa, because regardless of what we say, this stuff is won in the states. Buttigieg, 24%, Sanders, 21%, Warren, 18%, Biden, 15%. Buttigieg, down 2%, Sanders, up 3%. This is NBC Wall Street Journal poll. Biden, 28%, Sanders, 21%, Warren, 18%. Again, Sanders and Biden up top, clarified as the frontrunners. Sanders, up 2%, Warren, down 4%. This only gets to my point that the race is between Sanders and Biden. YouGov, economists. Biden, up 3%, 29%. Sanders, up 3%, 19%. Warren, 17%, down 4%. Again, the race tightens. Biden and Sanders as the frontrunners. Emerson, Biden, 32%. Sanders, 25%. Warren, 12%. Making my point, the race tightens between the two frontrunners, Sanders and Biden. Biden up 5%. Sanders down 2%. Warren down 8% in this poll. This one, Reuters. This is the one that just came out. Joe Biden, 18%. Warren, 10%. Sanders, 15%. The month prior, Biden was at 19%. Warren was at 9%. And Sanders was at 14%. Biden is down 1%. Sanders up 1%. Something else. Look at this. Independents are this corner. Biden, 5% of independents. Sanders, 8% of independents. In the last month poll, Biden was in double digits with independents, with Sanders at 5%. Biden has dropped, 7 points with independents within the course of 1 month? Sanders has upped his by 3%. He takes the lead with independents of everyone in the race based on the Reuters poll, a lead that Biden had in spades. In fact, the closest person was Buttigieg, and that doubles what Biden doubles it. So Sanders takes the lead with independents in this poll and climbs on Biden, 3 points away. From the standpoint of Democrats, you get 25% Biden, that makes sense. 19% Sanders, again, the number 2 person for Democrats, even among Democrats. Something else I want to show in this poll. look at this. So who do you agree with more so on immigration? Sanders, 18%. He wins it. Who do you agree with more on healthcare? Who do you think has the best plans on healthcare? Sanders, 27%. No one is even close. Joe Biden gets the number 2 spot, by the way. Warren comes in a distant third. They trust him more on it. Meaning him saying, I'm for Medicare for all, this is the plan I'm pushing forward, this is what I believe in, and puts his stake in the ground. And I am the last antibody on this plan because everyone else has, for the most part, forsaken it, despite them saying that they were on board for it in the beginning. They did it for political optics. I was the one that actually believed it. Joe Biden never did that, though. Joe Biden never bullshit on healthcare. He said, I'm for an expansion of Obamacare. This is what I'm pushing. And they trust him on it enough to give him the number 2 slot on who do you think has the best policy on healthcare? Sanders, number 1, Biden, number 2. Not Warren. Not Warren. Who do you think is the best policy on the environment? Bernie Sanders. Nobody else close, 22%. No one is even close. Who do you think is the best one on the economy? Bernie Sanders. Nobody else is close. Nobody else is close. Who do you think is most likely to beat Trump? Joe Biden. Bam. Nobody else is close. No one else is close. Except when it comes to independents, who cut the margins. But from the standpoint of Democrats, no one else is close. Independents don't buy that argument, though. I hope you realize what I'm saying here. Among Democrats, they consider Joe Biden to be the person to take down Trump. This is the guy who we believe. By a margin almost double. You go to independents and it's cut to 5. Independents are not entirely buying this notion of electability that Joe Biden is selling. Democrats, however, are. That is significant. That's significant. The reason why that's significant is because when you look at all of these questions, especially on who do you think is the best on healthcare, who do you think is the best on environment, who do you think is the best on economy, these are major, major issues, and they're saying across the board, Sanders. You get to this question of who do you think can beat Trump, and Democrats, doubly so, say Joe Biden. Independents are like, yeah, we're not really sure about that. We'll give you the vote tally, but we're not entirely sure on the argument that you're trying to sell here. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because this number, I've argued, is the reason why Joe Biden is 3 points more than Bernie Sanders in this very specific poll for Reuters. If you go to RCP, Biden still 27 to 19. Warren collapsing. But I want you to see something. Biden started up here, and he's been dropping as a trend line ever since. And right now, he's on his way down. But look at Sanders in the blue. He's ascendant. Sanders is almost higher than he's been since April, whereas Biden is utterly collapsing. My only point, and my main point in this video, is that the race is tightening between those two people, Sanders and Biden. And the other people in the race, for the most part, especially Warren, has utterly collapsed. Bloomberg has been able to spend $100 million to get 5 points in the race. But nevertheless, I think it's these two ideological ends that are having their say in their way in the sun. The ultimate question that I think these two are basically trying to answer, not even directly per se, but almost indirectly, is what does the Democratic Party stand for? Because up to this point, people have not necessarily been able to give a decent, believable answer. Who do you think is more authentic? Who do you think is more honest? Who do you think is the best on environment? Who do you think is the best on healthcare? Who do you think is the best on immigration? Across the board, they keep choosing Sanders. They keep choosing Sanders. And yet, when you look at the national polling, you end up with Biden. Now, some people look at this, and this goes to, I guess, the second point. People look at this and say, there's no way that Biden is leading. Now, there's truth to that, and there's also somewhat of a lie to that. Truthfully, the national polls lie. They just do. Ultimately, they give you a decent feel for what the public is thinking of in the sense of the election within the context of the nation. But we don't vote nationally. For elections like this, these elections are won in the states. And if you find a situation where state by state by state, the guy who's thought to be most electable, which is Joe Biden's selling point, the reason why Joe Biden is in this number like this is electability. It's not because they love him. It's not because they think he has the best ideas. It's not because there's passion for him. It is a faction of the Democrat, you can call it a silent faction, that asks the basic question of who's the guy that we believe we can sell to the American population to get them to take Trump out of office. It's the electability argument. The other part says, yeah, we don't buy that argument. And we want radical change in this country. And not just that, we also believe that that can win. The reason why Joe Biden is up, and the reason why I said the polling is not lying on this, at least the trend lines. Yes, there's some polls where people get dodgy results, or where some people would game the results by shifting who they're asking questions to a particular demographic to get a particular answer. But even in the context of that, the only way that that works is if there is a particular demographic that votes more so in line with a particular candidate. My point is the trends, I think, have truth. And in this, the trend nationally shows Joe Biden as being the person who they think can beat Trump. And that in and of itself is adding points within his polling. The catch here is that can fall apart the moment that people start to believe that somebody else is more electable. It's not so. People discount some of the polling saying that Bernie has these rallies, Bernie has more money, Bernie has more energy. That's true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the silent aspect of the party thinks that's a risky prospect. And even if they like Sanders, may say, yeah, I vote for Biden. That doesn't get people to get out of bed. That doesn't get people to go to rallies. That doesn't get people to be energized and excited. What it does do is get people to go out and put a tally on election day believing that other elements of the public would buy that. But again, I point to you and say, independents are not buying that argument. That's only a Democratic argument. Sanders is trying to pull this. And he's trying to get people into this mindset that, look, not only am I the guy that have the better ideas, I'm also the guy that's more electable. And going from state to state to state confers a certain momentum. If you win Iowa, you win New Hampshire, you win Nevada, then the people who are in the other states and this notion of electability starts to get a little dodgy. And if they believe that the other guy has better ideas, which based on polling, they do, the electability argument fizzles and goes away. Joe Biden right now is living on electability. And based on the trend line, that argument seems to be getting weaker, considering that seems to be his strongest sticking point. If this polling is right, and again, this polling just follows the trend that RCP has been showing in general, this race is tightening. Biden and Sanders. And I strongly suspect that this tightening would just get that much more consistent. Fascinating polling. I've been looking at the results of this, fascinated by it. I got to be honest, I did not think Joe Biden would be able to last this long in a primary contest. But fact is, part of the public thinks this is the guy we need to use to sell to people to beat Trump. And that overwhelms anything else. And they would look at somebody like Sanders or even like Warren as a risky prospect. A lot of that is because they've been propagandized for the last 40 years that incrementalism is the greatest thing on earth and that's the best that you can do. And you have somebody else who's now saying, yeah, that's not true. That's not true. And I can pull this off. And they believe him. They consider him to be straightforward, authentic in what he's trying to get accomplished. And not just that, that he wants it. And that's the gorilla that we want to use to go beat Godzilla. Yes, I agree with this. I think this is awesome. So we will see. I could be wrong on this, but I've said a few times that I really do think this race is between Biden and Sanders. The catch here is Biden could win this. Just because the race is tightening, just because Sanders has all the money, just because people think he's more honest on this stuff, there are going to be billions of dollars trying to stop Sanders from winning this primary. A party that he is running in does not want him to win this primary. There is a lot of stuff that can get involved. The polling is nice, but the polling is not necessarily the real vote. When votes started taking place in Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, you get a much better chance on what's real. The argument from people from Sanders' side could be right. Us expanding the electorate and the people who we're bringing to the polling is not something that polling takes into consideration. So the fact that we're in first and second place in many of these states at all gets across numbers of our movement that is being undervalued and still coming out in first and second spot. That's their basic argument. When we start hitting these states, we're going to show that people are on our side. And when you get to states like South Carolina, some of the other states that Joe Biden is using as a black firewall, that firewall will at the very least budge or come down. And Sanders doesn't need to win South Carolina. He just needs to not get crushed in South Carolina from the standpoint of the delegate votes. That's his argument. Biden's argument is I'm more electable. That electability argument can fall apart in a whim. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all. And again, it's not the polling, it's the trends. The trends are the things that matters. Biden being in the number one is a trend. Sanders climbing is a trend. It's a trend over multiple polls. Warren collapsing is a trend. Buttigieg eating into her numbers and Sanders eating into her numbers. All those things are trends. Biden getting the black vote is a trend. Sanders getting Hispanics and the youth vote. Those things are trends. Whatever you think the individual numbers are, in various polls, yes, but looking at it from an overarching thing, I think you can look into it and come away with certain assessments based on that. Not to mention it's all we got. By the same token, Sanders being more favorable, more authentic, more honest, more trusted on essentially the main issues that the Democratic Party cares about, all those things matter. If Biden's trend for being this thought of is more electable shrivels up, and I'm telling you, if he loses, if Sanders wins the first 3 states, the electability argument starts to fall away. That's what he's betting on at this point. That's a heavy bet, and you better win in order to maintain that particular bet. Like, share.